Yo, what up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Pnoid News. Man, listen, I got a dude in my comment section that keeps begging me to watch this fucking movie, right? And so today I watched about an hour and a half of it, you know what I'm saying? And most of the time, I'll be honest, I felt like shooting myself in the face. So I'm going to give you all a taste of, you know what I'm saying, like the beginning of this movie. Then we're going to skip to like 34 minutes, you know what I mean? And, get past the nonsense. So I'm going to let you understand why it is I hate this movie. You know what I mean? I'm hoping y'all can put in the comment section why I probably do. Let's rock.
Deadly riots over the government's plan to avoid defaulting on its loans.
Is that the unemployment keeps rising, and it has to keep rising just because we have an excess supply of goods, which is
this is all borrowed money that our
and that debt is owned by banks in other countries.
About $1 trillion in bonds.
M-O-N-E-Y, in the form of a convenient personal loan. A filter cigarette that delivers the taste, and 45 malt liquor.
Are you hot?
Quite some time ago, by a second
America is sponsoring
I first learned it from my grandmother. Now, my grandmother was a wonderful person. She taught me how to play the game Monopoly. She understood that the name of the game is to acquire. She would accumulate everything she could, and eventually she became the master of the board. And then she would always say the same thing to me. She'd look at me and she'd say, "One day, you'll learn to play the game." One summer, I played Monopoly almost every day, all day long. And that summer, I learned to play the game. I came to
So you're a scientist, and somewhere along the way, hammered into your head is the inevitable nature versus nurture, and that's at least up there with Coke versus Pepsi or Greeks versus Trojans. So nature versus nurture, this by now utterly oversimplifying view of where influences on how a cell deals with an energy crisis, up to what makes us who we are on the most individualistic levels of personality. And what you've got is this complete false dichotomy built around nature as deterministic. At the very bottom of all the causality of life is DNA and the code of codes and the Holy Grail, and everything is driven by it. And at the other end, a much more social science perspective, which is we are social organisms, and biology is for slime molds. Humans are free of biology, and obviously both views are nonsense. What you see instead is it is virtually impossible to understand how biology works outside the context of environment.
All right, so basically these guys stand here and they go over replacement baby theory, right? Which, is always fucking a super interesting thing to, sit here and listen to a bunch of aristocrats, and Jews from fucking New York telling you, about how you should, raise your children, that type of thing, And, look at this douchebag. This guy's a fucking douchebag as a whole. So, all right. We're going to get into the part of this video the guy wanted me to go over. It's like an hour long, so I don't know. We might cut it up. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Let's rock. Let's rock.
And specifically, the psychiatrist and researcher Daniel Siegel at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, has coined the phrase interpersonal neurobiology, which means to say that the way that our nervous system functions depends very much on our personal relationships. In the first place with the parenting caregivers, and in the second place with other important attachment figures in our lives, and in the third place with our entire culture. So that you can't separate the neurological functioning of a human being from the environment in which he or she grew up in and continues to exist in. And This is true throughout the life cycle. It's particularly true when you're dependent and helpless and your brain is developing, but it's true even in adults and even at the end of life.
Human beings have lived in almost every kind of society, from the most egalitarian, hunting and societies seem to have been very egalitarian, for instance, based on food sharing, gift exchange.
Small bands.
They were very egalitarian, you know what I mean? Like the men hunted, the women, you know what I'm saying, stayed home with women's work and whatnot, you know what I mean? But like, yeah, they were very egalitarian and stuff, you know what I'm saying, when it comes down to it, you know, it's like it is what it is, you know. I mean, men didn't have a role in their culture, you know what I'm saying, and women didn't have a role in their culture, but by all means, let's perpetuate this stupid fucking narrative. Like, Jesus goddamn Christ.
Of people living predominantly off of foraging, but a little bit of hunting. Predominantly among people you have at the least known your entire life, if not surrounded by third cousins or closer, in a world in which there is a great deal of fluidity between different groups, in a world in which there is not a whole lot in terms of material culture. This is how humans have spent most of their hominid history. And no surprise, that makes for a very different world. One of the things you get as a result of that is far less violence. Organized group violence is not something that occurred at that time.
Organized group violence did happen, you dumb fuck. There was always fucking skirmishes and goddamn fucking conflicts between people. That's just how it worked. All right, legitimately, like I went to school for anthropology. There's studies of cultures that, I mean, they literally they went to war as part of their culture, right? Like, not like like, oh man, we breed warriors. No, like literally, like they went to war once a year to eliminate a certain number of people, and then they'd take slaves, and then they'd sit here and they'd have giant roasts of these pigs in a feast to, celebrate, the end of the war, or victory, or, honor, or, the tradition, or the people who died, whatever it was, you know what I'm saying, right? All of the above. And they'd stand here, and that was a group violent action. Legitimately. It was a group violent action, and it was touted by somebody who was like, oh yeah, there was female warriors in these tribes, and like legit, like it was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, man, listen, like, shut the fuck up. Jesus, I fucking hate these people, like, so much. Half of this nonsense, right? Half of this fucking shit, right? Legit, like, with, like, the past, like, 35 minutes of this film was just people going, violence, 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 violence. Like, violence ain't the fucking problem, right? Violence is supposed to happen. Like, people are supposed to be violent. People are naturally predispositioned to violence. People are not naturally predispositioned to killing other people, right? That's the difference, right? Like, you're not supposed to be like, it's hard to murder, right? But to punch somebody in the face is fucking easy. You know what I mean? Like, fighting is something that you learn as a child. It's just something that you do to stand here and, establish basically like the hierarchy of social cohesion in any society. Doesn't matter. Like, you put 7 boys together. I don't care if they're fucking Chinese, or if they're fucking German, or if they're African, or, if they're South American, or if they're American. It doesn't fucking matter, right? You take any of these fucking children and legitimately you put 5 fucking 7-year-old boys together. A skirmish will happen no matter what culture you're in, because it's just how it works. Boys are going to stand here and be naturally fucking violent. Not to the level of killing each other, but most definitely to the level of going, hey, look, we're going to do what we need to do. It's just a natural human part of life. I understand you whiny cosmopolitan fucks don't want to ever have to deal with somebody punching you in the face. But, you know what I'm saying? You need to learn how to be a man and accept the fact that sometimes you're going to get your fucking jaw jacked. Just is what it is.
Of human history, and that seems quite clear. So, where did we go wrong?
Violence is not universal. It's not symmetrically distributed throughout the human race. There is a huge variation in the amount of violence in different societies. There are some societies that have virtually no violence. There are others that destroy themselves. Some of the Anabaptist religious groups that are complete, strict.
I love the fact that, like, they're bringing up the Amish, right? They're probably going down a road that I drive, right? Legitimately, right? Like, like real shit. Let me put this like this, right? I know Amish people, all right? I've witnessed Amish kids playing, right? You know what I'm saying? Because I go fishing at the same places where they take their kids to go swimming. Legit, their boys still act like boys, right? They still stand here and squabble and, you know what I mean, like punch each other, you know what I mean, act like chuckleheads. It's what everyone does. It's part of being a monkey in the end of the day. Legitimately, like, I don't understand, like, why this is some just giant, massive fucking thing, like, that fucking people can't handle at all. Like, I don't understand.
Pacifists, like the Amish, the Mennonites, the Hutterites. Among some of these groups, the Hutterites, there are no recorded cases of homicide. During our major wars, like World War II.
Well, you know, there's not recorded cases of homicide because they don't record these things, right? Legit, but, like, they kill each other. Get nothing misunderstood. There's a reason why, like, they don't have birth certificates. Right? Because if one of them goes missing, no one notices. They don't collect Social Security. You know what I mean? Like, they're not on the grid. You know, like, they believe me, violence happens inside of these communities. It's just they don't talk about it.
Where people were being drafted, they would refuse to serve in the military. They would go to prison rather than serve in the military. In the kibbutzim in Israel, the level of violence is so low that the criminal courts there will often send violent offenders, people who've committed crimes, to live on the kibbutzim in order to learn how to live a nonviolent life, because that's the way people live there.
So we are shaped by society. Our societies, in the broader sense, including our theological, our metaphysical, our linguistic influences, etc., our societies help shape us as to whether or not we think life is.
Yo, can I just say that dude looks like John Malkovich with a wig and a fucking with a wig and a Karl Marx beard? Like, yo, legitimately, like, yo, I trust nobody who has a Karl Marx beard. At the end of the day, right? And I especially don't trust anybody that looks like John Malkovich in a fucking wig.
Is basically about sin or about beauty, whether the afterlife will carry a price for how we live our lives or if it's irrelevant. In a broad sort of way, different large societies could be termed as individualistic or collectivist, and you get very different people and different mindsets, and I suspect different brains coming along with that. We in America are in one of the most individualistic of societies, and capitalism being a system that allows you to go higher and higher up a potential pyramid, and the deal is it comes with fewer and fewer safety nets. By definition, the more stratified a society is, the fewer people you have as peers, the fewer people with whom you have symmetrical, reciprocal relationships, and instead all you have are differing spots and endless hierarchies, and
well, that couldn't be the fact, you know what I'm saying, that, like, you fucking people in particular are trying to turn individuals all into fucking cosmopolitanites. You know what I mean? You're taking these local country folk, you know what I mean, putting their kids in college and, you know what I mean, basically standing here breeding that nonsense into them. You're destroying fucking communities and, you know what I mean, like standing here destroying families and trying to tell women, like, yeah, you go, girl, you don't even know man, fish, bicycle, you know, and, like, destroying the entire community by which you're fucking trying to stand here and bitch about. Like, this is your fault, right? This isn't capitalism's fault. Like, capitalism's existed for 200 years. We've had this problem for about 50 in the end of the day, right? Legit. Like, in the 1960s and 70s, you knew your neighbors. You knew your community. Today, you don't. Why is that? Could it be because of Satan? No, that's not it. That's not it. Oh, yeah. Feminism. That's the fucking reason. John Malkovich, always fucking trying. Yo, he's a good actor, but, like, yo, for fuck's sake, he's always appearing in these garbage ass fucking B films. He needs to stop this shit. Does he have a fucking habit or something he's trying to pay for? Like, yo, for fuck's sake.
A world in which you have few reciprocal partners is a world with a lot less altruism.
And by the way, anybody who watches these movies and is not annoyed by the fucking musical backgrounds, right? Like, you know, in the beginning of this bitch, right, when it was standing there going, ooh, and like a deep, dark, scary music and all the nonsense that it was doing and all this bullshit, legit. That is, that is, the moment you hear that, you should immediately go, fuck, I'm about to be propagandized, right? Because that's what it is, right? This is communist propaganda in the end of the day. And it's utter garbage, right? I mean, like, yeah, there's issues. But the issues aren't caused by what they're saying, and the solutions that they're proposing do not fucking work. You know what I mean? They're garbage as a whole, right? Like the idea that like there should be more social safety nets, like remotely I agree, you know what I'm saying? But like the reality is the reality, right? The real, like right? But like the true part of this is that, you know, we've destroyed our families. Why did we do this? Because, and yes, we can blame capitalism for this, right? Because women went into the workplace and women went to college and women decided that they wanted to be men instead of, you know, I mean, taking their rightful place in our communities where they belong, you know, and where they're needed is the issue. You know what I mean? Like women are needed in the household. They're needed in the community, but they're sorely missing because, well, you know, their ambitions are to, you know what I'm saying, like put pictures of their ass on Facebook, you know what I mean? And like fucking put up pictures of them with cat ears on and eyebrows on fleek so that they can get as many likes as possible. You know what I mean? And then, you know what I mean, maybe, just maybe, you know what I mean, they'll meet a dude, you know what I mean, with a fucking 40-inch cock and, you know what I mean, like 20-pack abs and shit, right? And, you know what I mean, roll out. Because hypergamy is a thing in the end of the day. You know, that's, you know, that's what the fuck it is we did. You know what I mean? Because we said, oh, man, you should be free. We should be egalitarian. You should be able, you go, girl, you go be a man, fish, bicycle. It's really weird how, like, you know, this entire movie, there's not one female who speaks in the entire fucking thing, but they're talking about egalitarianism. Like, shut the fuck up, you dumb fucks. You don't even follow your own bullshit.
All right, so this brings us to a total impossible juncture, which is to try to make sense in perspective of science as to what the nature is of human nature. You know, on a certain level, the nature of our nature is not to be particularly constrained by our nature. We come up with more social variability than any species out there, more systems of belief, of styles of family structures, of ways of raising children. The capacity for variety that we have is extraordinary.
In a society,
well, I'm pretty sure it takes like a man and a woman and then they make a child. And that's about it. Like everything else is only there because government. Right? Like if the government didn't exist, you wouldn't have, you know what I'm saying, like homosexual adoption or, you know what I mean, transgendered or any of this fucking retarded nonsense, right? We really don't have a whole lot of different mutations on how we raise children in the end of the day. I mean, like, yeah, you have like places where the kids are more or less part of the tribe, which is we're supposed to be here. All right, problem is we've killed our fucking community in the idea that we should be a fucking collective of 300 million fucking people, which in general doesn't work as a whole, right? Like, let's keep rocking though.
Which is predicated on competition and really very often the ruthless exploitation of one human being by another, the profiteering of other people's problems.
First off, my mans, you should eat a sandwich, all right? Legitimately, you look hungry, right? But secondly, on top of that, your need to eat a sandwich, you should probably eat some meat, all right? Because, you know, your vegan diet does not make you look healthy in the end of the day. I know, like, on the Upper East Side, right, which is where he said he actually practices, you know what I'm saying, fucking his shit, right? Again, I fucking hate being lectured to by fucking rich communists. I can't stand it. Like, legitimately, like, oh, communism's good, but, like, you know, I don't want to give up my fucking, you know what I mean, like, goddamn Upper East Side condo. Like, go fuck yo. I hate these fucking people.
Problems, and very often the creation of problems for the purpose of profiteering. The ruling ideology will very often justify that behavior by appeals to some fundamental and unalterable human nature. So the myth in our society is that people are competitive by nature and that they're individualistic and that they're selfish. The real reality is quite the opposite. We have certain human needs. The only way that you can talk about human nature concretely is by recognizing that there's certain human needs. We have a human need for companionship and for close contact, to be loved, to be attached to be accepted, to be seen, to be received for who we are. If those needs are met, we develop into people who are compassionate and cooperative and who have empathy for other people. So The opposite that we often see in our society is in fact the distortion of human nature.
Like real shit, man, they be dragging you in. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, what you have to understand about good propaganda, all right, is the fact that it's like not noticeable. Okay, and like what you're noticing right here, all right, if you notice when they're panning the camera into his face and the music's kind of getting a little louder, more intense, right? That don 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 don, right? Like, yo, that's a perfect symbol of propaganda, right? And you like once you start seeing these things, you're like, fuck, man, like it takes you completely out of the movie. It's like when somebody told you there was a zipper on Godzilla, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden you spent the whole fucking movie trying to look for the zipper, right? Like it takes you completely the fuck out of the movie. Like once you really start noticing the flaws with this nonsense, right? And that's how you break your mental grasp that you have on what they're saying, right? Because like, it's absolutely true. Human beings have, you know what I'm saying, like emotional needs and mental needs and physical needs and all these type of things, right? Like we all talk about this all the time. And like, yes, like absolutely propaganda and advertising does, you know what I mean, stand here and try to feed you that shit and, you know what I mean, push it towards you. And we all get caught up in some form of it one way or another. Whether you're a tech guy, you know what I'm saying, you love the techie stuff, or whether, you know what I'm saying, you're a guy like me and they go, man, you're like, you hear that, like a rock, standing arrow straight, you know what I'm saying? You go out and you fucking salute your fucking Chevrolet. You know what I mean? Like we all get pulled into some of this. You know what I'm saying? Like no matter what it is. And I got you, you know what I mean? Like, but the trick is to stand here and go, I'm good. You know what I mean? I don't need your bullshit. You know what I mean? And go the fuck outside. To turn off the TV, turn off the computer, turn off the fucking phone, go outside and enjoy what God made for you. You know what I mean? And realize that, you know what I mean, all you really need is you and your fam, you know what I'm saying? Like your girl, if you got one, you know what I mean? Your kids, if you got those, you know what I mean? Your mom, your dad, your sister, your cousins, whoever the fuck it is, your best friend. You know what I mean? That's what's important in life. And that's, you know what I mean? That's the part that I think we're missing. And that's why I like, you know, the idea that, you know, fucking, it's all about capitalism that's destroying shit is nonsense, right? It's not. You know what I mean? It's the lack thereof of like community because like we're just not attached to shit anymore. Like, I don't know about y'all. I had to run out of my old community because they got taken over by people who weren't part of the community. You know what I mean? And like they were terrible human beings. They were ghetto trash. And I had to go because I was like, I don't want my kids growing up around these motherfuckers. Because like I don't want my children to have that type of struggle. I want my children to be able to enjoy nature and, you know what I mean, enjoy life. And that's important, you know what I mean, to understand that, you know, we've had these migrations in America where, you know what I mean, let's be honest here, like black folks and fucking, you know what I mean, immigrants have moved into these goddamn neighborhoods and have basically destroyed all the shit that made them a fucking community. You know what I mean? That's something that a lot of people, like these motherfuckers here, won't fucking talk about. I'm not going to tell you this shit. And there's a lot of parts of this movie where they go, oh, capitalism's an issue, you know, because like we're going to make you a slave and all this nonsense. I'm like, yo, I'm going to show you, you know what I mean? Like legit, but let's keep rocking. Man, listen, fucking work.
Sure, precisely because so few people have their needs met. So, yes, you can talk about human nature, but only in the sense of basic human needs that are instinctively evoked, or I should say certain human needs that lead to certain traits if they are met, and a different set of traits if they're denied.
So, when we recognize the fact that the human organism, which has a great deal of adaptive flexibility, allowing us to survive in many different conditions, is also rigidly programmed for certain environmental requirements or human needs, a social imperative begins to emerge. Just as our bodies require physical nutrients, the human brain demands positive forms of environmental stimulus at all stages of development, while also needing to be protected from other negative forms of stimulus. And if things that should happen do not, or if things that shouldn't happen do, it is now apparent that the door can be opened for not only a cascade of mental and physical diseases, but many detrimental human behaviors as well. So as we turn our perspective now outward and take account for the state of affairs today, we must ask the question, is the condition we have created in the modern world actually supporting our health? Is the bedrock of our socioeconomic system acting as a positive force for human and social development and
legit, man. Like, yo, this one, like that whole whistling in the fucking background thing. That's not your computer. There's not like, you know what I mean, something leaking around you. That's this piece of shit fucking video. Here, watch.
Progress.
Yeah, see that? You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, legit, they're, yo, again, this video would be 100% better if they didn't do this type of nonsense. Like, legitimately, right? Because that's how you know you're being propagandized. Like, yo, they're bitching about advertisers and all this nonsense, and they're using the same dirty-ass garbage tricks that they do, but they're really bad at it. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, let's keep rocking now.
Or is the foundational gravitation of our society actually going against the core evolutionary requirements needed to create and maintain our personal and social well-being?
So one might ask, where did this all begin? What we have today, really a world in a state of cumulative collapse. You get it started with John Locke. And John Locke introduces property, and he has three provisos for just private right and property. And the three provisos are that there must be enough left over for others, and that you must not let it spoil, and that you, most of all, must mix your labor with it. It seems justified. You mix your labor with the world, then you're entitled to the product, and as long as there's enough left over for others, and as long as it doesn't spoil, you don't allow anything to go to waste, that's okay. Well, he spends a long time of his famous treatise of government, and it's since been the canonical text for economic and political and legal understanding. It's still a classic text of study. Well, what he did is, after he gives the provisos, and you're almost thinking at the time whether you're for private property or not, he's given a very good and plausible and powerful defense of private property here. Well, he drops them. He drops them like that, right in one sentence. He says, well, once the introduction of money came in by men's tacit consent, then it became, and he doesn't say all the provisos are canceled, erased, but that's what happens. So now we have not product and your property earned by your own labor. Oh no, money buys labor now. There's no longer a consideration of whether there's enough left over for others. There's no longer a consideration of whether it spoils, because he says, well, money's like silver and gold can't spoil, therefore monies can't be responsible for waste, which is ridiculous. We're not talking about money and silver. We're talking about what its effects are. It's one non sequitur after another. Just the most startling logical legerdemain that he gets away with here. But it fits the interests of capital owners. Then Adam Smith comes along, and what he adds is the religion to this. Locke started with God made it all this way. This is God's right. And now we get also with Smith coming along and says it's not only God's, I mean, he's not saying this, but this is what's happening philosophically in principle. He's saying it's not only a question of private property, that's all now presupposed, is given. And that there's money investors that buy labor, given. That there's no limit to how much they can buy of other men's labor, how much they can accumulate, how much inequality, that's all given now. And so he comes along, and what his big idea is, and again, it's just introduced in parentheses, en passant. You know, when people put out the goods for sale and...
Well, let me say this. The problem with Adam Smith, like legitimately, like the actual issue with him is the fact that his entire premise is based off the fact that the nation state is not a real thing, right? So like if the nation is not a real thing, then like all of his shit works. But the problem is that the nation is a thing, right? Countries are a thing, right? And his ideology only, like the idea of his capitalism only actually works is if, you know what I mean, like trade is free. Right, and I'm saying like if borders don't actually exist, but borders do exist, and you know what I mean, trade isn't free. You know what I mean, and you're going to have individuals who are going to be mercantilist in, you know what I mean, the system as a whole, and it's going to fuck everything up. You know what I mean, the whole way. So like Adam Smith, I'll be honest with you, that is one of the most boring reads in the history of mankind. right? It just, if you can get through it, more power to you, my friends. You know what I'm saying? Legit. Like, yo, get it done. But I'll be honest with you. Like, yo, fuck, is that a long goddamn book? And man, is it dry.
Others, the supply, and other people buy them with the demand and so forth. How do we have supply equaling demand or demand equaling supply? How can they come into equilibrium? And that is one of the central notions of economics, is how do they come into equilibrium? And he says it's the invisible hand of the market that brings them into equilibrium. So now we have God is actually immanent. He just didn't give the rights.
Yo, look, seriously, I hate atheists, like, legit, so much, right? But, like, all right, so the invisible hand of the market is basically, you can only sell as much as individuals are willing to buy, right? So, like, if you can make a whole bunch of stuff and individuals can't buy them, right? Like, you can only have so much of, like, a demand for your product, then, like, you're not going to supply as much, the next time you make them, right? That's kind of the deal. So, like, once you meet either peak ability to manufacture or peak ability to sell, like, the manufacturing is going to be equaled out by the sales is kind of the deal, right? But it's not something that, like, you can tangibly measure at the very beginning of your process. That's why it's considered an invisible hand, because there's no way that you're ever going to be able to predict it, of what's going to happen, right? Because, like, and then people's tastes are going to change, and individually, like, consumers are finicky as far as stuff's concerned, right? Like, so as style goes, right? Because style is a very, it's a very intrinsic ideology, you know what I'm saying? It's something like, it's not tangible. Like, you can't predict these type of things. So in not being able to predict these type of things, you're going to end up in a situation of where, the market is going to lead the manufacturers, you know what I'm saying? Not the other way around. The manufacturers aren't going to lead the market. Unless you go like, well, I'm the only manufacturer and this is what I'm producing. So if you need this, then fucking you're going to buy this. Like, it is what it is. Had to be, be it be medicine, or like, say, like, you're the only auto manufacturer. You're like, I'm only going to make a Model T. That's it. There's no other auto manufacturers. But as soon as somebody else starts making something else, it's better. People are going to buy that. That just tends to be how it works.
To property and how, all its wherewithal and its natural rights of doing all that Locke said. Now we have the system itself as God. In fact, Smith says, when he talks, and you'll never find this quoted, you have to read the whole of the Inquiry into the Wealth of Nations. He says, the scantiness of subsistence sets limits to the reproduction of the poor, and that nature can deal with this in no other way than elimination of their children.
Well, yeah, that's some basic shit. I think that's important for everybody to understand as a whole, right? Because, like, all right, so, if you make too many kids and there's nobody to be able to feed them, or there's no way to be able to feed them because there's no food, those kids are going to die. It's like, it's happened throughout history, droughts, famines, earthquakes, volcanoes, whatever, right? Whatever wipes out the food supply. People are going to die, you know what I'm saying? Or like, you have like fucking 60 goddamn kids on some nonsense and you can't feed them all. Like, some of them are going to die because you can't feed them. It's part of life. You know what I'm saying? So, like, this is why, you control how many kids you have in a society where you don't have welfare and societal, benefits and, social programs.
So he anticipated evolutionary theory in the worst sense applied. This is well before Darwin. And so he called them the race of laborers. So you can see there was inherent racism built in here. There was an inherent acceptance, life blindness to kill innumerable children. And he thought, well,
that's okay. No, bad movie. All right, you don't get to stand there and just say retarded, reckless nonsense. No, bad movie. All right, legitimately, it's not racism was said. What the fuck, yo, Jesus Christ! Like, man, look, he was writing in a time when all the laborers were white. The fuck are you talking about? All right, yo, look, man. I'll be honest with you. It's getting to be about 34 minutes at the second. So like, yo, we're gonna cut this off. You know what I mean? And then like, yo, I'll work on it some more. You know what I mean? Like later or some shit. Cause like, yo, my kid's about to get up. You know what I mean? I'm gonna spend some time with him. Like it is what it is. Yo, y'all know the deal. Like, share, and subscribe. Yo, look, my man's Ryuku, I think was your name. Bruh, do me a favor. You know what I'm saying? Hit that Streamlabs link in this description right here so that, you know, like you can pay me for my pain and torture having to go through this nonsense. Because YouTube don't pay me shit. All right? Peace.